and there are better than people. Sven, don't you think I'm right? Listen, I have a toddler, so I watch Frozen a lot. Frozen 1 and Frozen 2. I feel like I know the soundtrack for each one of those movies like the back of my hand. And I'm not really sure at this point what that says about me, except that I'm a parent. Hey y'all, welcome back to Bookishrealm. Hey, hello, like hi. You're probably like, what is going on? So, some of you know, some of you may not know, one of my 2023 goals was to try to figure out, once again, here we are, trying to figure out how the hell am I going to do my wrap-ups, because I just can't seem to get a handle on it. I can't seem to get it right. I can't seem to find what works best for me. So we're going to try this again. The issue that I was having with the recent reads, as I talked about in that 2023 goals video, which I will link up in the card symbol above, is that I was struggling to balance doing creative vlogs that I wanted to do or thematic vlogs that I wanted to do, and then doing a weekly reading vlog. It just was too much for my life. I don't have the capacity nor the time to do something of that. So it became a question of how do I allow myself to have some flexibility and creativity, but also still give you all the reviews, because a lot of people come to this channel for the recommendations and the reviews. I kind of figured the recommendations and reviews and discussions, those seem to be kind of like the major hitch, which, hey, I love it. If you love it, I love it. So I'm trying to figure out a way to balance that. And the conclusion was to come up with a weekly wrap up of sorts, meaning that on Sundays he would be getting a quick sit down video from me talking about everything that I read throughout the week. Now, I can already tell you, you will not be getting one of these from me next Sunday because I am not going to be in town where I live. I have a grandmother that is terminally ill, and so I am going to make my final visit to go see her next week. So I will be out of the state next week, and unfortunately I just am going to take that time that I need to process what I need to process and to be with family. And so this is going to be one of those weeks where I'm going to have to skip, and then you will get 2 weeks worth of reads in the following weekly wrap up. So I hate to do that so early, but unfortunately I just got that news recently, as in this week I just got that news. So with that being said, you know, so early in the game, but that's how my 2023 is starting, unfortunately. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about everything that I read this week. I am not going to go over the graphic novels, the comics, and the manga. That is going to be on my channel, The Realm of Comics. I will mention them here and I will show the pictures, but I will not be reviewing them here. You can look forward to hearing reviews of those materials when I do a mid-month and a final wrap-up on that channel. If you're not following the Realm of Comics channel, I will make sure that I link it up in the card symbol above. That's where all of my graphic type of, you know, recommendations and wrap-ups, and I have some interesting projects that I'm going to be doing over on that channel this year, so be sure that you check that out. So we're going to go ahead and, you know, get it out there. I mean, y'all, this is the first week of 2023, and, you know, we have to think about how has our reading been. So far, for the first week of this year, I have finished 9 books, which I am very, very happy about. I have been a reading mean machine. That's what I was trying to say. I've been a reading machine this week, and a lot of that has to do with me avoiding, because I have a lot going on right now and trying to process mentally what's going on. So avoidance is always my tool of coping, which is not healthy. I do recognize that it's not healthy, but I do know that that is exactly what's going on, which is why I finished 9 things. So quickly, the graphic novels, manga, and comics that I did finish this week that I'm not going to review are going to include My Boyfriend is a Bear by Pamela Ribbon, Something's Wrong with Us Volume 2 by Natsumi Ando, Kim Reaper Volume 1, Grim Beginnings by Sarah Grayley, Magic Boy Volume 1, a graphic novel by the Cow. It's either Ko or Cow. And then also Something's Wrong with Us Volume 3 by Natsumi Ando. So those are the graphic works that I finished this week, and I will, like I said, be talking about that on the other channel. Let's go ahead and dive into the books that I actually ended up reading this week. So the first one that I have on this list is a carryover from last year, and that is American Dreamer by Adriana Herrera. This is the first book in the Dreamer series. I feel like I feel like this is my first Adriana Herrera book. I could be so wrong about that, but I'm like 95% sure this is my first book by Adriana Herrera, unless I've read like a short story or something, but I highly doubt it. And I loved it. This was really good. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. This follows two characters, Nesto and Jude, and it's told in alternating perspectives. We are following Nesto after he ends up leaving New York City and he's moving to upstate New York. And that's where he wants to set up his food truck. So he runs this food truck that brings homage to Caribbean culture and the crossing of the Caribbean nations. And I thought that was such a neat aspect of it, just showing the unity amongst Caribbean nations. And then we're also following Jude, who is a librarian, a youth librarian, which, listen, it's food and librarians. This book couldn't have gotten much better than the fact that it just had food and librarians in it. Let's just be honest. But these two definitely have a lot going on individually, and they meet, and take place. I know I said that Nesto was moving from New York City, but he's moving to Ithaca. And I said upstate, but he's moving to Ithaca, New York. And they meet because Nesto sets up his food truck outside of the library. They meet prior to that at a gas station, but which was a very, very interesting meet cute. But they really get to know each other when he sets up his food truck outside of the library and Jude and his coworker come to get food. The two inevitably kind of, fall into this somewhat of a romance. They both have things that have happened in their past that make them very hesitant on kind of allowing themselves to feel everything, although with their individual kind of perspectives you could see how intense their feelings are for each other. But I think on the outside, when they're dealing with each other, they don't want to express those feelings in deep detail. I loved that we got so much robust character development in this, and that we got to know so much about each one of them, because by the time that they developed this romance, I felt like it was extremely authentic and real. It wasn't anything that was rushed, and it wasn't anything that I felt like was unrealistic. And for me as a romance reader, that's one thing that really can turn me off from a romance, whether it's short or long, to be honest with you. I have to feel invested in the romance between the characters. I have to feel the chemistry and the vibe between them. And I think Adriana Herrera did an amazing job creating that energy between the two of them. There are content warnings for this one, especially for homophobia, racism. There's a lot of religious bigotry in this, especially as it applies to Jude's story, who, oh y'all, Jude's backstory really, really broke my heart, because he had gone through so much. Not saying that Nesto didn't, but I felt like Jude, because of his story, which I won't talk about because it is spoilery, really just made me hurt, because he was so alone. But the fact that he was so willing to take a chance and open up his heart to someone after everything that he had been through just made me admire his journey and him as a character so much more. I think that they had a great balancing of personalities. There was kind of a third act breakup, which it kind of like, was like, but it happened, and it is what it is at this point. I feel like I'm kind of just used to it, so I don't gripe about it as much as I would have in the past. I felt like the writing was very fluid. It was easy. It took me so long to read this book because I felt like I was just trying to savor all of it. From the details of the food descriptions, it wasn't like Nesto's food truck and his business was kind of like this backdrop and it was just kind of there to be an added piece of his character. No, like we really got to know like what food he was serving, where the food was from, where his ideas came from, the name of the food truck, and how his friends were, interwoven into the creation behind a lot of his recipes. Which also, let's talk about side characters. Side characters in this were phenomenal. Amazing. I felt like everyone had a role, and I didn't realize that the rest of these books, because I knew it was part of a series, but I didn't realize that the rest of these books were going to be romances that existed amongst Nesto's friends. And I couldn't be more excited. I'm super excited about that because I really love Nesto's friends, and I love that they not only supported him but also checked his ass when he was out of pocket, because he needed that at some points. And you can't get much better than friends like that. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into their romance. I love Nesto's mother. I loved Jude. I can't even remember Jude's best friend who also works with him. I love that we got this huge scope of the importance of librarians and libraries to communities, especially with the work that Jude was doing. And I love that Adriana Herrera paid homage to libraries and librarians. And it was just, y'all, this book was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. If there's one thing or one aspect of this book that I didn't enjoy, it would be Misty. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to spoil it too much. And if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Misty is trash, garbage, dumpster. Hated her. I still don't feel like she got enough punishment for the bull that she pulled throughout the entirety of this book. But it is realistic in the fact that she's not really having to answer for her actions. It's very realistic, but it was extremely frustrating and I absolutely hated that. But 4.5 stars, knocking myself out. 4.5 stars. I really did enjoy this one. Okay, so the next one that I ended up reading was one that everyone was raving about last year. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it because I'm always very, not weird, but I struggle a lot with hype books. I feel like I've said this before, where I get nervous that because it's gotten so much hype that I'm not going to like it. And so it scares me. Not because I'm like, oh, I don't want to read what everybody else is reading. I just get very, very nervous. I get super, super nervous. But I decided to, put the audiobook on hold. And because my library had bought it, and I was like, okay, when it comes in, I'll just give it a try and see what happens. And that's Legend and Lattes. And it was good. This is definitely one of those books where it's vibes. I never understand when the creators are like, yeah, this book was vibes. And I'm like, but what are you talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about. And picking up this book, I do understand, like, this book is vibes. There's not really much that happens. We're following a retired, I think, is she an ogre or an orc? Or one of the two. Please don't kill me. She's one of the two. And her name is Viv, and she's retired from doing what she's been doing, and she wants to settle down, and she wants to open up this coffee shop. Well, it's very interesting because I think as humans reading about this in a fantastical world, you understand what's going on. Like, you have a latte, and you have creatures in this world or beings in this world who are like, what the hell is a latte? First of all, what the hell is coffee? And so it's funny and lighthearted, and it's amazing. And then there's this kind of hint of a sapphic romance between Viv and her partner, who ends up becoming her partner, like in business, who's a succubus. And it's just kind of one of those things where you get introduced to all these characters that Viv has known. It's very sweet. It's very charming. It's a lot of great relationship dynamics between characters, even in the face of conflict, because there is some minor conflict that does happen. Well, I wouldn't say minor. It is major conflict, but not anything that's like super, I don't know how to explain it because it is kind of detrimental, but like at the same time, the way the book is written, it didn't feel like it was like over and done with, like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I mean, it felt horrible, but it was like the character dynamics fixed that. It fixed everything. And so that's what I loved about it, that even in the face of conflict, we have these great character relationships that were warm and cozy and fuzzy. There's not a lot that happens in this. This is very much so cozy fantasy, very entry level for someone like me who doesn't read a lot of adult fantasy. So if you don't read a lot of fantasy and you're interested in stepping into fantasy, I definitely would rec this one for you, because like me, I don't typically read a lot of fantasy, especially adult fantasy. I'll put it out there. I read a lot of middle grade and YA fantasy, but I don't read a lot of adult fantasy. And so stepping into this and feeling very, very comfortable, it has those cozy vibes. If you're in a place where you're just struggling and you're not having a good situation happen in terms of like your personal life, and you need something that's just going to give you warm feelings, this is the book. Because as someone who's currently going through a lot and it's only, we're only in the first week of the year to be going through so much, the vibes in this really did assist in giving me some level of comfort. I know that this is the first book in a series. I think that the second one comes out sometime this year. Maybe August, November of this year. I can't remember what the exact date is, but I am looking forward to reading more in this series, and I definitely understand where the hype is coming from surrounding this one. So the one that I read after this is hands down one of my favorite books of 2023. And I can't believe that already in the first week of this year, I have a contender for the best book of 2023 already. Best book. It's going to be hard to knock this one from a top position, and that is We Deserve Monuments by Jas Hammonds. Oh. Y'all, I was supposed to read this one last year because I got an arc of it and just things got wild by the time this one released in November of last year. I finally was like, I'm just gonna put it on hold because I do the selection for the youth stuff. So when I had to purchase the audiobook, I waited and then I put it on hold, and I was waiting for some other people to get finished listening to it, and it finally came in, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna dive in. Don't really know much about this book, and I read this book and it came to me at the perfect time. So this book follows a character by the name of Avery. Avery is moving with her parents from DC to Georgia, a small town in Georgia, to live with her grandmother who has a terminal illness, Mama Letty. And she knows really nothing about her mom's side of the family. She has flashes of Mama Letty and some of the people in that community, but then again, not really, because she was so young the last time she was there. So when they get there, essentially Avery's mother you can tell from the jump that Avery's mother is trying to make amends with Mama Letty, and because she's dying and she wants to be there for her mother. But there's something about their relationship that's not right. Like something has happened and they're constantly arguing. They're constantly going for each other's necks. And in Avery's mind, Avery's like, why don't you just get over it? Just get over it. Stop arguing. Mama Letty's about to die. And it was such a journey for Avery because there was a lot of familial secrets that she was not aware of, a lot of cyclical abuse, generational abuse that was happening that she was not actively aware of. And so she had to learn that this whole idea of how she even viewed her mother, because even when she describes her mother from her perspective, you get this image of her mother being this strong Black woman who, has her PhD and is very respected and revered. And so it's almost breaking that idea that Black women can just deal with anything, that we're strong, we can make it through anything, that we don't have the capacity to be vulnerable, or we don't need the opportunity to be vulnerable. And even Avery could not understand how much pain and hurt her mother had been carrying. And so I like that Jazz kind of addressed that. Then we have like the conversation about the intersection of being Black and being queer, and how Avery's experience in being pansexual when she was in DC and coming to the small town and being out was just not the same. And it was not the same for some other characters that I can't really talk about because it is an extreme spoiler, because I was even shocked when I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And then on top of that, we get this great insight to these group of friends. So when Avery comes to this small town, she ends up meeting two other characters whose names are slipping my mind, Jade, and I cannot remember the second character's name. Okay, it's Simone. That was going to drive me wild. I'm like, why can't I remember her name? So there's a romance that starts to develop between Avery and Simone as the three of them get close. It's interesting because the three of them kind of have this pact, or at least Simone and Jade did before Avery got there, that they just don't date because friendship is more important, and loving your friends and loving yourself is like primary what comes first. But it becomes kind of difficult when they continue to spend time together and then Simone and Avery start to kind of feel as though they have these feelings for each other. And so it was watching that relationship dynamic change and watching them try to figure out how to fix that relationship dynamic. I've seen adult reviewers complain, one, about the relationship dynamics between Avery and Simone, like, oh, they just fall in love so quick. Y'all have got to stop reading these YA books and looking at it from the perspective of an adult. These are not written for us, okay? Think about when you were a teenager, all right? Or what teens would do. They fall in love quick. They don't always make the best decisions. They think that the world revolves around them. They think that they know everything, which was another complaint I saw about Avery. She thinks she knows everything, and it's so annoying having to read her from the perspective of an adult. Well, one, this book wasn't written for you, and two, she's acting developmentally appropriate. That's how teenagers function. That's how I remember functioning when I was a teenager. I thought I knew everything, and I thought the world revolved around me, which is normal. It is normal for teenagers to think that they are not done cooking it. Their frontal lobe is not finished developing. They don't make the best decisions because guess what? that frontal lobe, which is part of your decision making, is not done developing. They're not gonna make decisions the way we would make decisions as adults. So to see Avery and Simone and Jade make all of these mistakes and feel like they know better than their parents, know better than their grandparents and everybody else, it didn't bother me because I felt like that's reality. I just love the character development, the plot development, the intricacy of everything, the power of finding your voice and being seen when everyone else tries to tell you that you shouldn't be seen, that you shouldn't be believed, that you shouldn't be heard. There's so many memorable quotes from this. I think that just Avery really just having to come to grips with the fact that she got to know this grandmother that she never knew, who was hard and really tough on the outside, and really was just she called Avery fish because Avery had her lip pierced. And getting to know her and knowing that in the time that she would get to know her, she would lose her. I think it just came to me at the perfect moment. Even though this book wasn't written for me, I'm not the intended audience, I'm losing my grandmother right now. And I kind of have the same dynamic that Avery has with Mama Letty. It's just, you don't really have that tight of relationship, but you're getting the chance to fix things before it's too late. And so that's why I keep saying this book came to me when I didn't know that I needed this book, and I could never thank Jazz enough for writing this book. The writing was beautiful. It was poetic. I like the structure of the book. I like that we were getting perspectives of people from the past. So we were meeting all these characters, especially in the small town, but we were getting their perspectives from when they were living in the town at a young age and certain points in their life. And parts of it were just tough. It was hard. The ending completely just broke me. I cried and cried and cried on the way to work when I was listening to the end of this. But this book was just beautiful. I don't know how many ways to tell you that, just to see the generational issues that happen sometimes, especially in Black families, when we don't talk about stuff, we just kind of push stuff, we just put it in the carpet, we don't talk about that, we don't talk about that. But seeing how open, how they didn't have a choice because they only had but so much time, and they chose love and healing over grudges and hatred. And that love and healing for me is something that I'm trying to work on right now. So I hate to get emotional, but I needed this book. I need this book so badly right now. And I don't know if anything could ever top this book because of what I'm dealing with right now in my life. I think that this book is just kind of going to be glued to my spirit for the rest of the year. And that's just what it is. So 5-star read for me. If I could give it 1,000,000 stars, I would. Favorite. I loved it. And the last book that I ended up reading this week was Sincerely Sicily by Tamika Burgess. This is one that I had put on my anticipated releases for January, and I'm glad that I got to it fairly quickly. This is another good one. Like everything that I've been reading so far, there's one graphic novel I didn't like, but most everything that I've been reading so far has been like 4.5, or 5 stars, which is good. It's a great way to start the year. This focuses on a young girl by the name of Sicily who ends up having to go to a new school because her parents enroll her in a new school, and she doesn't know anybody there because her close friends are going to a different school. So she's really nervous about it, but when she gets there, she finds out that there may be some kids that she knows from the past, like elementary school, which there is one girl that she does end up knowing. So they're in this class and they have to give these presentations about like where they're from, or their family's from, their culture, their heritage, or whatever, because I think the teacher uses a reference that her family's from France. And so of course Sicily is going to be doing a project on Panama because she is from Panama. Her parents were born and raised in Panama, and her brother were born here in the States. So she's giving her presentation, the class becomes like confused. Some of them are confused, some of them is pure racism and hatred. They're like, how are you from Panama and you're Black? And so Sicily doesn't know how to answer that question because in her mind, it's not something that she's ever had to think about. And so she's confused because they're questioning her identity. And so then she begins to question her own identity. And so it becomes this exploration of what does it mean to be Afro-Latin? And she did not know that that was even a thing. So she was saying that she's Black and Panamanian, and her parents are like, no, you're Black Panamanian. There is no and in the middle. And so throughout the course of the book, she's learning so much about her culture. Now, there were a couple of interesting elements to this book. So not only do we have Sicily facing these struggles while she's at school, but we also have some issues at home. So her grandma, her abuela, is not the best. Like, she comes from a different generation, different beliefs, different backgrounds, and right smack dab in, you know, around the same time that the school stuff is happening, she, you know, says, why do you have braids in your hair? Why do you wear your hair braided? That's ghetto, that's low class, and you need to take them out. We don't do that. Why haven't you? She looks at her mother, at Sicily's mother, and it's like, why haven't you relaxed her hair yet? So you have kids at school questioning the idea of her being Black Panamanian, and then she's at home and her grandmother's basically like, your hair is ghetto. So she's getting it on both ends, and I think that this kind of reiterates the idea of having a community at home where you're supported when stuff like this is happening, because it's something to hear it from people on the outside, but it's a hell of a difference to hear that crap from someone on the inside when it comes to that whole, like, you know, good hair type of thing. And that feeds into texturism, and there's also some conversations about colorism. So that's all wrapped into one. Then we get these great conversations about culture versus race. And I think that this is something that I'm happy is being discussed with younger audiences, because this is a middle grade book, because you have adults who are my age who don't know the difference. They look at them as if they're the same thing. Ethnicity, race, nationality, people use those terms interchangeably, and they're not. They're completely different. They're not the same thing. So I'm glad that the author did take the opportunity to kind of dive into that. There are also some, like, you know, typical middle grade things that we see thematically, like friendships. And what I did like about this one is this one discusses like first crushes, which I thought was really cute, because it's easy to kind of steer away from that when you're reading a middle grade book or writing a middle grade book. But I'm glad that we kind of dive into that. And it's not like a major plot point or anything like that, but it is part of the everyday experiences of a middle grade audience. I think that a lot of kids would connect with that specific element. This is another one that I thought was really well written. I really enjoyed it. I liked that I learned personally so much about Panama in reading this, which is ironic because Panama is one of the countries that I pulled for this month's Around the World reading vlog. So I probably will talk about this one a little bit in that reading vlog, because the author is from Panama, born and raised in Panama, and immigrated to the United States. So I probably will also talk about this one, which is great. I like it. Still gonna read my translated works, but I think that this would be a great addition to the vlog. I also appreciate the fact that, you know, we get to see Sicily journal about it. And a lot of this has to do with a connection between Abuelo and how he would write. And she also loves to write, and she had difficulty writing after he passed away, but trying to find her voice again with writing for the school magazine. And it does have a lot to do, once again, like a common middle grade theme, finding your voice, learning how to use your voice and stand up for yourself. I really enjoyed it. 4.5 stars. If you have not had this one on the radar, I definitely would recommend picking it up. Okay, so last thing, what am I currently reading? So I have 2 things physically that I'm currently reading and 1 audiobook, which my audiobook is a new Talia Hibbert book, which a lot of people have read or are currently reading. I am not that far into it. I don't even think I'm 20% into the book yet. Let me see. It's Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, which it's good so far. I'm 19% in. So I have 4 hours and 59 minutes left of that one on audio. I'm listening to that one via Libro FM. So thank you to them for the advanced listening copy of that. And then I am currently reading Island Magic. One of my goals that I wrote in my reading journal for this month was to read 5 books from my personal shelf. So I read one, which was American Dreamer. This is my next one, Island Magic by Bet Ford. This is one of my old school Black romance books that I've been reading, and I'm about 61 pages in. It follows a woman who was dating this guy who owned, or still does own, this huge hotel franchise. He owns them, he runs them, multimillionaire. They meet, they fell in love, they dated for 4 years, but then she starts to want more and he doesn't, and so she's kind of like, well, screw this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So she ends up going back to Martinique to vacation, which is interesting because he owns the hotel there and that used to be their favorite vacation spot. So of course, naturally, he's going to come back and try to get her because he finds out that that's where she is. So this is a second chance romance, but there's an interesting element because she meets somebody else on the island, and I think she's debating at this point, like I said, I'm only 61 pages in, she's debating giving him another chance or giving him a chance instead of dealing with Gordon, who's her ex. So we're gonna see where that's gonna go. I think her and this new guy are about to have a tennis match. I don't know, like play tennis together or whatever. And I'm also reading One Piece Volume 1. This is the first part of the East Blue saga. I am trying to make it through One Piece this year. I am reading, Shay's also doing this from Shay Geeks Out, is reading One Piece as well as Yona this year. I have been wanting to get through One Piece, and I was like, this is going to be the year I'm going to do it. In order to get through all 100 plus volumes that are currently out, I have to read 2 volumes a week. So I am actually technically behind at the time of this video going up, because I'm only maybe this far into the first volume. So I have I have a lot more to go, but between today and tomorrow, the day that I'm filming this, which is a Saturday, between today and tomorrow, I am hoping that I can get this one finished and read volume 2 and also get my volume of Yona read. But we'll see what ends up happening. But that's all that I have on my agenda right now to read this week. Of course, naturally, I'm going to probably end up reading more. Like I said before, please note that you will not get a weekly wrap up from me next week because I will not be here. I will not have the capacity to film. I'm not going to be in an emotional space to film. I actually don't even know how much reading I'm going to get done next week because of what I'll be doing. So be on the lookout for it. The third week of this month, you'll get 2 weeks worth of my reading in that what would have been the third weekly wrap up, week 3. So yeah, I hope you all like this new format. If you've read any of these books, or if you have any questions about these books, or if you're adding them to your TBR, if you want to let me know which you read this first week of January, let me know in the comment box below. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.